The year is 2018. Lewis Hamilton has just won his 4th World Championship after beating Vettel's Ferrari, putting himself well and truly into the GOAT debate. He's at the top of his game. Surely he's going to win everything he touches for the next few years. And the sports governing body decides to ban him. Now, that really just happened, but not with Lewis Hamilton. It happened to Agata Sitko, the absolute GOAT of powerlifting. With 133 GL points, she's redefining what people thought could be done in strength sports. She's put nearly 10 IPF GL points between her and the next best IPF lifter. That's insane. And they're banning her? The sport of powerlifting is on the up, and everybody around the world is asking why the Polish branch of the IPF, PZKFits, would even consider banning the golden child of the sport. The Federation have given their reasons. You can be the judge of whether or not you think that they're worthy of a ban. But you should definitely go listen to Agata and her coach talk to Urins on the Sabato Sessions podcast. But let's steer the conversation elsewhere. I mean, ignoring the obvious questions, first of all.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
So what's going on with the IPF? It seems like every time they're in the news, it's for really bad reasons. From the recent knee sleeve ban, to athletes getting banned under Article 14, to the IPF's president stepping down in less than respectable circumstances. The Federation's just not getting it right. And in some ways, it is getting better with this new committee that we've got. But in others, we're just not making the progress and taking the steps that I think we need to make. Let's talk about how the IPF could restructure itself in order to prevent these issues occurring and set themselves up properly for the future. If there is no change, the IPF will not retain its dominant position in the powerlifting world. So let's start with the good. A lot of changes in the works. From my local Fed, British Powerlifting, which is going to change how it does testing and anti-doping to help ensure that the sport can stay clean in the future, to the various amendments that will be presented, or indeed have been presented, in the August 22nd Extraordinary General Meeting. If these amendments pass, they'll make some really important changes to the way that the IPF works. Adjusting Article 14 to be less invasive and strengthening the democratic nature of the Executive Committee is a strong start, which has no doubt been sparked by the recent failures of the Federation and its previous committee. But I think more ought to be done. For me, the big one is confidence. The IPF budget lists about 40% of its revenue as coming from sponsors. And we all know the big one is SPD. On top of this, SPD offers a lot towards the prize pots at regional, national, international competitions. As we discussed in my last video, this puts the Federation in a pretty awkward spot. They have to regulate SPD to keep competition fair among the equipment providers. But they also have to schmooze up to them to ensure that SPD continue to fork out millions of pounds a year to keep the Federation's lights on. At this point, I don't see how the size of the IPF-SPD relationship could change. The Federation would simply run out of cash without SPD's support, losing half of their direct revenue, and much more indirect support would cripple the IPF. What I think does need to change and can change is the transparency of the relationship. There were thousands and thousands of rumors that when the stiff knee sleeve ban came out, it was because SPD had sent some lab tests to the IPF. And while as much as anybody else, I want the rules to be upheld, and I'm glad that people are making sure that their competitors are sticking to the rules. It certainly raises questions as to the nature of the relationship, especially given the Federation seemed to act pretty quickly on this information to ban those sleeves, and their decision was later overturned. But more than anything, what that whole situation really shows us is how much confidence athletes have lost in the IPF. The fact that people were even thinking about this as a possibility, that the Federation even possibly could have been colluding with one of the big commercial bodies in its sport, it's so indicative of how much trust people have lost in the IPF. Nobody knows exactly what went down with the knee sleeve ban, how it started, and ultimately how it was resolved. But I'm sure everybody has some pretty serious questions that they'd like to levy against the IPF. I think it's put some serious pressure on the Fed. They have to show athletes that they can trust them. Otherwise, athletes are going to start shopping around other Feds, and the IPF doesn't take too kindly to that. On Article 14, let's be clear. Many other sports have similar rules in their main feds, from boxing, motorsports, martial arts, and more, have this kind of rule. But the IPF's is significantly stricter than everybody else's. WADA, or the World Anti-Doping Agency, is the agency that many sports choose for anti-doping rules and enforcement. And in fairness to the WADA rules, I think it's more than fair to ask why a tested athlete in a tested federation would go and compete in an untested meet if they weren't, dabbling about the good stuff. Beyond that, even if they're not, athletes competing around people who are openly on gear or openly untested, athletes competing around steroid users and steroid use in that kind of space is a bad look for a tested sport. It's a bad look for a clean sport that people are going and dipping their toes into the untested world. And I think WADA's rule that says that if an athlete competes in an untested or not WADA sanctioned sporting federation, they shouldn't be allowed to come back and compete in your tested sporting federation is probably fair. I think that that's a good rule, and I think it's a sensible rule. There's a reason that WADA requires the IPF and every other sport that it regulates to ban athletes that do this. In the IPF, if you compete in any other fed, even if it is WADA sanctioned, you get a 12-month ban. If the Fed wants to keep its lifters in the Fed, the solution is to offer more and charge less. Make competitions better for cheaper, and athletes will want to stay around. Make the sport more visible. Make the sport earn athletes more money, and they will want to stick around. Make the sport better, and athletes will want to stick around. But banning athletes for shopping about, especially when, let's face it, you've not had a good run of it recently, it's absolutely absurd to me. Beyond that, banning people won't help the IPF long term. Every time someone gets an unreasonable Article 14 ban, it just takes a chip away at the IPF's brand image and the IPF's reliability. All it does is create negative news about the sport. The IPF can, and maybe does, pay some of its executive committee members a stipend. Please do this. Give people financial incentives and also generate the accessibility for people who haven't made $1.50 working in the financial sector to come in and run the federation properly. Without the financial incentive and without the accessibility that the financial incentive offers, you are not going to get the best people running the federation. End of story. But also, advertise this amount and be transparent about it. As it stands, I couldn't confirm whether the outgoing committee or this new committee has or will get the stipend that the IPF constitution allows them to. I think even if the amount is zero and it's turned down by the president on moral grounds or the vice president because they don't need it, it should be disclosed how much the amount is. Zero is an amount, and having this disclosure fills people with confidence that what's going on in the sport is transparent and fair. Disclosing this information builds trust, and the IPF needs every bit of credibility that it can get its hands on at the moment. And thank you to the 9 member nations who are trying to fix the democratic processes in the IPF. Term limits and making all executive roles democratically elected is so important. I mean, it's so important, I'm surprised it wasn't already done. Currently, members of the exec are directly appointed, which means the president and sometimes the vice president just goes, yep, I'll take you. And these people have equal votes in big decisions as those who've been democratically elected. It's like if the prime minister got to just have 10 of his mates come into the House of Commons with him. I think especially with the state that the outgoing executive committee is in, the question isn't, is this going to pass or do we need this? The question is, why didn't we have this 10 years ago? And it is surprising that we didn't have it 10 years ago, I think. But ultimately, it's good that we have it now, right? And hopefully this has passed. As I'm filming this, the IPF haven't uploaded the agenda or minutes to the website, so I don't know if this has passed. But hopefully I'll check tomorrow morning when it's no longer the sort of long bank holiday weekend, and there'll be good news for everybody to see. So this brings us back to Agata. How the IPF have let this situation continue and fester for over a month now is absolutely beyond me. But there are a few things that this situation clearly highlights as needing to change. Part of the issue for Agata is the funding which PZKFits, the Polish IPF-affiliated federation, which ultimately banned Agata, receives. Their government funding is tied to if they hit certain targets, including competitive performance on the world stage and water compliance, like drug testing. But the federation, PZKFits, is made up of more than just powerlifting. It's bodybuilding and it's strongman too, which means that the powerlifting side loses funding if the other two bits end up doping, and the other two bits end up losing money if Agata doesn't don her Polish singlet and go dominate on the world stage. The obvious solution is for the IPF to help the Polish powerlifting branch of PZKFits spin out and become a standalone entity. And I think they should set this as the standard internationally. The sport shouldn't be financially tied to other sports, to the doping in other sports, no less, which it doesn't regulate and it doesn't control. And powerlifting should have sovereignty over its own actions. The fact that the Polish Federation can't make powerlifting decisions because it has to make decisions for multiple sports damages powerlifters. It's hugely damaging to let the control slip through their fingers into the hands of other sports feds. All of this could have been avoided another way though. The IPF needs to create an international standard for athletes' rights in its sport. When it comes to competing, set out whether athletes have the right to deny competing like Agata did, whether they have the right to choose a coach, assuming that the coach is in good standing, like Agata wanted to, whether they have the right to criticize their federation, which Agata can't because the Polish Federation will ban you if you criticize it. Side note, that's completely insane. How any democratic body could regulate speech that's critical against it is completely beyond me and deeply undemocratic. Back to the main point, the IPF should let us know whether athletes can appeal to the IPF and circumvent their national body for these kind of decisions and ask the IPF to protect them. This external action, like Agata seems to be seeking, going through the courts, going through the legal route, or through the sporting courts, through arbitration, is slower and it's costly and it's difficult and it's bad for the athlete and it's bad for the sport. So if the IPF could offer hey, come talk to us and we'll do a proper review process of this and we'll hopefully get something sorted out, that's a great solution that I think they really should offer. And importantly, offering that doesn't mean that athletes can't go and seek legal action through the courts. It just gives them an alternate pathway, which can only be a good thing. In my experience at these big opaque operations, it's really difficult to make even really obvious corrections happen because everyone cares so much and has such strong opinions about the way that they think that stuff should be done that you end up in clashes over nothings while the big picture slips away. I think we can change this, and part of that is all of the things that we've mentioned already. But part of that is by embodying certain principles within the federation. Thinking about transparency, consistency, credibility, and I think most importantly, individual rights could revolutionize how the Fed appears in the news media, how the Fed makes decisions, how people view the Fed in general. I think every controversial move or seemingly broken aspect in the IPF could come down to failing in one of these 4 categories. I think changing it could be really easy. It feels like low-hanging fruit for the Federation to grab and move on from. And be better, become better. Sirion Peterson has released his multi-year plan for the IPF now that he's in power, but I think it lacks like these overarching principles that should be guiding what the federation do. It has plans for like how they're going to grow media presence. It says, oh, media presence is really important for us. It also says, oh, anti-doping is really important for us. But why does anti-doping matter? Anti-doping matters because of credibility, individual rights. We care about the federation being trustworthy. We care about individuals being able to compete on an equal playing stage. That's why we care about this stuff. We don't care about it for the sake of it. Ultimately, I feel like the IPF has a lot of like capital that it can use in this situation. It can make bad mistakes for a bit and it will get away with it because it is so dominant, because it is so much better run than other feds maybe, because it has longer history, because it has better rules, because whatever, it doesn't really matter. It has some space to make the wrong decisions, but eventually it'll run out of room. And if it doesn't make a fundamental change to the way it does things, it will run out of room, be it in the next months or in the next years or in the next decades. And I would personally hate to see that happen. So hopefully we see something material change. But yeah, if you found it interesting, or if you have thoughts, you think I've got something right or wrong, just let me know in the comments. You could subscribe or like if you like as well. Up to you, but I'll see you when I next upload in sort of 9 to 12 months time.